I'm really excited to see so many of you here. We're already 23 people in the call, so that is really great to see that there are so many people that are interested in this agenda. So first of all, I want to thank you for showing that interest. And then second of all, I want to thank everyone who has been taking part in making this possible. Of course, a great thank you to Matter that have supported us in this project with also producing the white paper. And a huge thank you to AWA, who has also been contributing with expert insights and making this possible. Caroline, if you can go to the next slide, I'll walk over the agenda for today. Yeah, so first off, we have a brief presentation from Mikkel, who is one of our partners from AWA. After that, we'll have Jason from Janssen Pharmaceuticals tell us a bit about circular economy in clinical trials. After that, I will go into the key learnings from the white paper that we're releasing together with the main authors, Sif and Laura. So I'm really looking forward to that. It will be the first virtual ping pong presentation that I have done, even 1.5 years into the COVID pandemic. Then last but not least, we'll have Steffen from Novo Nordisk sharing with us how Novo Nordisk is leveraging the business cases for circularity in facility management. When the keynotes are done, they'll be relatively brief and to the point. We have 20 minutes where we'll be able to do a Q&A and a panel debate with Steffen, Jason, and Stephen Collins, who has joined us, the CEO of Matter. I know that Mikkel will also be available for questions regarding IP, and Sif and Laura will also be joining if anyone has questions for the specifics in the report, where they'll be way more knowledgeable than myself. With that said, and without further ado, I think I of course also need to say that this is super exciting. I'm really thrilled that we can gather this kind of competencies to share insights about an agenda that is so important as circularity in this sector is. So Mikkel, can I ask you to try and share your screen and tell us what you got?
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much, Frederik. I'm very excited to be here as well. And hello, everyone. So my name is Mikkel Roed. I'm a partner in AWA Denmark. I'm a European patent attorney, and I'm also the president of the Association of Danish Intellectual Property Attorneys, ADIPA. So I've, as Frederik mentioned, I've answered some questions in the white paper regarding how patents can help drive the transition of medtech towards circular economy. So Frederik asked me to start by saying a few words about this. So first off, to get your attention, I just wanted to show you quickly this recent headline from the news. You might have heard about this. It relates to the companies that have developed the COVID vaccines. And these companies are currently fighting to prevent the undermining of their patents on the vaccines because some people want to make their vaccines available to everyone. And fortunately, I only have 5 minutes, so I don't have time to discuss this interesting subject. But what I wanted to say by showing it is that the pharma industry have definitely realized the value of their patents. So my point is that especially large companies, both in pharma, medtech and other sectors, are very patent active, and they use their patents very actively in their businesses. So just a few words about the patents and the patent system. Patents are essentially a legal tool that's set up by society to promote technical innovation. And I think it's generally recognized that this tool works very well, both in and outside pharma and medtech. So the subject of today is, of course, sustainability in medtech. What I'm thinking is, why not consider if the patent system can be used as a tool to promote this? Pharma and medtech deal with health issues and ultimately saving lives. As I mentioned, big pharma and medtech are already very good at filing patent applications and use their patents. And I have this feeling, which may be completely unsubstantiated, that big pharma and medtech may be somewhat hesitant in prioritizing sustainability, because how can you justify considering waste handling if this could put just a single human life in danger? So perhaps it would be good to have some inputs from the outside with regard to how to make things more sustainable. And I'm thinking of SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises and startups. And these types of companies have a reputation of
You'll need to unmute, Mikkel. I just did a mass mute, Mikkel, so you'll need to unmute. I can't do that for you, I'm afraid.
Hear me now?
Yes, thanks.
So what I was about to say was that SMEs and startups have generally, I think, a reputation of being innovative, disrupting, thinking out of the box. And this is also recognized in the white paper, i.e. that there's innovative potential in SMEs and startups, and that this can play an important role in the subject of the white paper. And my impression, by the way, is also that the Novo project that I believe we'll hear more about later also confirms this. All right, so there's recently been a lot of focus from different authorities on the relationship between SMEs, startups, and patents. And that's because reports show that SMEs and startups are not very active in protecting their innovation using patents. And what I think this means is that one of society's perhaps most important tools in driving innovation does not have the impact that it could have. And if it's correct that SMEs have a great potential in developing sustainable solutions, such as in medtech, this seems to be quite unfortunate. And so there are currently quite a few initiatives, including the Commission's IP Action Plan, towards especially increasing the knowledge about patents among SMEs. So it seems there's a strong belief, which I share, that improved knowledge of the opportunities in patents would make the SME and startups more patent active, and hereby would spark more innovation. And since I think sustainability is in the DNA of many startups, I think this could also mean a lot to drive the medtech sector towards circular economy. All right, so this is my last slide. The two young women here have been attending AWA's trainee program for patent attorneys. And in AWA, we have about 15 to 20 young engineers starting, typically young at least, starting on our trainee program each year. And the reason I show you this is that these young people are definitely not afraid to remind the rest of us that it's very important that they and everyone else do their part in the green transition. And they also want to do the same as patent attorneys at AWA. So I have myself learned from them that we all have a responsibility to do what each of us can do in the green transition. And that's why I and AWA are very happy for the opportunity to contribute to the white paper and the seminar. And hopefully we hereby do our small part. And that's my 5 minutes. Looking forward to of the seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mikkel. And thank you all so much for listening in, and thanks for sharing the very cool Nerds Welcome poster. I know that the tote bags you have had with that slogan were completely ripped off of the shelves.
Yes.
So thanks a lot, Mikkel, for sharing. Jason, you're up next. I'm really looking forward to this. So for those of you that don't know Jason is working with Janssen, and we've been ping-ponging quite a lot about how to make digital health part of the circular economy. So Jason, without further ado, please take it away.
Okay. So we're looking at digital health devices, which are used in clinical trials, but also more broadly in the commercial space as well. And when we talk about digital health devices, particularly talking about wearable devices, wearable sensors that a patient wears, and these capture patient vital signs and other data, actigraphy, patient activity, and this gives us a great understanding of, or a great amount of vast longitudinal data to understand how disease progression impacts a patient's life, and conversely, how treatment could potentially improve a patient's life. We're also looking at smart packaging that gives us real-time insights into patients' adherence to their medications, and the ability to intercede if we see a patient who's not following their treatment or therapy appropriately. But despite all the great benefits of these devices, very little thought has been given to what do we do with these devices when they reach the end of their life. And just last year in 2020, there were 83 million units of just wearable devices that were shipped to the European market out of 400 million units that were shipped worldwide. That's expected to grow at a 12.4% compound annual growth rate over the next 5 years. And if that trend continues, every 6 years, this volume will double. So that's a huge e-waste impact that's rapidly growing. And the time is now to try to tackle that and get in front of it. If we look at these devices, why can't they just go into the normal waste streams? And that's because these devices pose a unique chemical and biological contamination risk. Smart packaging will contain trace amounts of drug product that resides in them. Wearable sensors have been in contact with patients for long periods of time, possibly raising an infectious disease risk. You get smart syringes, you've got trace amounts of or residual drug product in the barrel of the syringe, you have trace amounts of blood on the needle. We also see these digital blood collection devices as well, microneedle patches that also pose a biological contamination risk. And because of those risks, the default option for these in Europe has typically been incineration for energy recovery. In other regions of the world, it's sometimes gone into landfills, which is far worse. And this presents an opportunity, though, because we looked at a cross-section of these digital health devices, calculated their composition, or assessed their composition, and then we calculated an average representative device for this category. And we went back and said, okay, well, let's look at those 83 million devices that shipped to the European market last year. Many of those devices will only be used for a matter of weeks before they reach the end of their life, and they're already going to be hitting our waste streams. What if we could recover 70% of those devices, which is a similar recovery rate to what we see for other electronic devices? If we take the composition of that average representative sample, we estimate that there's about 108 million euros worth of valuable raw materials that's lost or potentially there to be harvested from those devices. There's 50 million euros in gold, 40 million euros of palladium, 9 million in silver, and another 5.5 million euros of lithium there. So there's an opportunity for these.
If we can take away only one thing from this presentation, then let this point be it. It's so amazing. Thanks for sharing, Jason.
Yeah, no problem. So I mean, this presents a tremendous opportunity because the 108 million euros could easily fund a lot of recovery schemes and opportunities to harvest these devices and to make this more circular. And so what we're looking at Janssen is really a more holistic solution to this, starting first and foremost with new circular design standards for these devices. Let's avoid making these single use as much as possible. Let's design these devices to be reused, refurbished, remanufactured, so that we maximize their life. Try to get as many use cycles out of those devices as possible. And only when we've fully depleted them of all of their value do they then go into the recycling stream, where we recover all the materials we can and use that to manufacture new devices. A critical piece to this as well, I mean, we can get the back end working, we can get the refurbishment lines set up, we can optimize our recycling lines, but we really need to get that citizen end user engagement to be able to get these devices back and collect them. And so that's where we're looking to run pilots in the three major regions of Europe: Northwestern, Eastern, and Southern Europe, really involving citizen end users, deploying behavioral science and nudging techniques, looking at different ways of collecting those devices back from citizen end users, and involving local stakeholders in the reverse logistics schemes in those as well, to make sure that we do have a system of bringing those devices back. So this is a very complex and challenging problem, and it's going to take a diverse array of stakeholders. I have 5 minutes, so I can't go into all of them. But we try to pull together everybody that kind of brings this value and brings a perspective to this solution. But I think my key message here is, beyond just the partners that we've sort of set up here, we are looking to start this project in January of 2022, but we're looking to invite representative stakeholders from across the different value streams to help us co-create this solution and build this holistic approach. So if you're interested, reach out to me, let me know. We've applied for EU or Horizons Europe funding. Hopefully we get a positive response next month and we get this kicked off.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Jason, and thanks for sharing this. Every time I see that graph of the recaptured minerals or the potential, I'm completely blown away. That's an amazing market potential. And that fits quite nicely into to the next presentation. I'll be giving it myself together with Steffen and Laura, so I'll take control over the screen and probably bounce you out there, Jason.
No problem.
Let's see if we can get this to work. Here we go. I'm going to talk about the business case for circular medtech sector. And first off, we're looking at how urgently action is needed, and the point here is that it's needed quite urgently. The second part of the call of the chat is going to be about the market that's currently demanding a wide range of solutions. This is where Steffen and Laura will step in. And last but not least, we'll be going through strategies and tactics for deployment. And most of you that are in this call are actually professionals from the health tech sector. So hopefully we can also give you practical tools that you can start tinkering with and working on in your own organizations. So in Green Innovation Group, we're working with market leaders, and that has shown us that green business models are possible and they can be quite profitable. For those of you that don't recognize the logos here, Novo Nordisk is the world's largest producer of insulin. The Growth Foundation, Vækstfonden, and Danmarks Grønne Investeringsfond are right now managing a 10 billion Danish kroner fund that's part of a 25 billion Danish kroner fund that's called the Green Future Fund. And we've helped them develop a financial framework to place those investments where they actually matter and have an impact. As you all know, greenhouse gas emissions have risen to unprecedented levels, and that's something that will have quite unfathomable consequences. And that is why we need to reach drawdown. It's the single most important mission in the history of our lives. So let's make it happen. If we don't make it, then we're going to be utterly screwed, to put it in plain English. A 2-degree temperature rise in the year 2021 will mean that shellfish are no longer able to form their shells and help us clean and cleanse our water ecosystems. They'll be quite catastrophic, beyond us not being able to eat seafood. On top of that, the water deficit will double, and this will have massive consequences, of course, to migrational patterns of refugees. It will have consequences for wars over resources. And on top of that, it will also mean huge crop failures. So we can expect that with the water deficit doubling, the problem of the water deficit will multiply with a much higher factor than just doubling. On top of that, In only 50 years, we've killed off 67% of all species. A lot of that has been consequences from the way we are running businesses that tend to have a very high impact on the surrounding environments. So there's a lot of good reasons to make this this greenhouse gas emission trend stop. One of them is literally saving lives of more species than I can count. But on top of that, it's also a great business opportunity, and that's hopefully why we will see a change in the development. So we all know that Denmark is celebrated as the greenest country in the world. This was an analysis made by an American university quite recently. I don't know if I necessarily agree to the conclusion, but I think that I do agree that in general we do have quite high marks in Denmark when people are talking about sustainability at large. However, there's a slight problem, and that is if everyone lived to the standards that we Danes live, we would need 4 planets in order to suffice and meet that standard of living. And if all the major 25 listed Danish companies make their sustainability missions and reach their targets, we are on track to a 3-degree temperature rise. And you remember how grim it was with the 2-degree temperature path. So I think you can make up the numbers and deduct that a 3-degree temperature path is not going to be much better. So we need to severely tighten up our efforts. We need to invest in the green transformation, and that's what we need to do in order to avoid this catastrophe. And this is an excerpt from the report that we did for the Danish Growth Foundation. Here we have basically mapped on the basis of UN's climate panel's data, the IPCC, where are the impact reduction potentials and how can we actually turn them into investable assets. I'd be quite open to talk to anyone who's interested in knowing more about this. So when we're looking at the healthcare sector, the environmental impact is often overlooked, despite it being 13% more greenhouse gas emission intensive than the automotive industry. I'll just let that sink in for you. This was a huge surprise for me and one of the main findings from the report. Getting here, I'll leave the stage to Steffen and Laura. Steffen and Laura, can you bring on your cameras and unmute, please? I won't be able to see it if you do it.
Yes, here we are. Can you hear us?
Yes, you're loud and clear. Nope. No, I can't hear you anymore.
I can hear you. Laura?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just go ahead.
So, wait, I'm sorry, Fred. I thought we were gonna do part 2.
I thought this was part 2, and it just said 1. I'm terribly sorry. Then I'll go really quickly. So, of course, collaboration of authorities and industry, that's a key factor in accelerating the green transition. We need new sustainable standards and regulations. We need new incentivization and increased funding. And as Mikkel also said, optimization of IP systems and education in the industry. And of course, what we are also seeing is that the digital health and IT is the biggest circular opportunity in even after the COVID-19 crisis. It's expected to reach $511 billion by the year 2027. So this is an area where we see huge business opportunities and where luckily also the industry has identified it. But as Jason also pointed out, it's not inconsequential. And here we make it to part 2. I'm sorry, I thought that was where we were.
Yeah, no worries at all. So thank you so much, Fred. Next, Sif and I are going to talk about the market and the fact that it's currently demanding a wide range of different kind of solutions. So as you can see, the market needs, first of all, reusable surgical textiles. Studies show how a simple product like the surgical gown could have huge sustainability benefits. Secondly, recyclable equipment and electronics. consumers will be more aware of the sustainable use of the medical equipment because they've already become conditioned at home not to throw away their electronics. And thirdly, sustainable packaging. A very tangible business opportunity is recyclable packaging consisting of renewable materials. And there's already a huge amount of green startups, some of which we also interviewed, innovating these new ways to do this. And fourthly, improved recycling systems. More guidance and sorting matrices are needed to manage the separation between general and hazardous waste. Also from the consumer perspective, the pharma products are sold in limited locations, like the pharmacies, which offer an opportunity to implement an incentivized recycling system, as customers could conveniently bring the old package back and then exchange it to a new one. And fifthly, efficient production, which focuses on smart ways to source and utilize materials. Can I get a next slide, please? Thank you. So the waste generated in the pharma industry creates massive costs. Let's say we eliminate waste by continuously reusing resources to the maximum potential. This offers further opportunities to cut material and production costs. So the market opportunity is actually defined by cutting costs while preventing harm to the environment. Next slide.
Cool. Hi, guys. So I'm going to talk about two areas where circular economy is already a part of the pharma industry. The first one being the refurbished pharma equipment market, which is expected to be worth 12 billion this year. The circular strategy has been successful due to the high value of the equipment. The refurbishment costs are relatively small compared to the overall cost of a new product. The system is designed in a safe way, which does not create incentives to return pharma products that are not fully functional or sterile. As an already existing industry, it has the potential to grow even bigger. Major factors driving the growth market are increasing privatization of the healthcare sector, large patient population base, and the large number of clinics with budget constraints in developing countries. So in order to refurbish the equipment, close collaboration between the pharma production companies and the refurbishing companies are crucial. Next slide, please. Another existing circular way is green chemistry, which is defined as the design of chemical products and processes that reduce or eliminate hazardous substances. And it's designed around 12 principles. There are substantial economic benefits to be gained by integrating green chemistry into research and development as well as manufacturing. Lower material inputs, reduced costs from waste disposal, reduced energy demand, and improved utilization of manufacturing capacity. Pharma companies that are practicing green chemistry in their processes show immense results towards minimizing waste. And it is also shown to be cost efficient because reductions of waste are related with significant cost savings. So you can also see here that research shows that cost savings are the #1 reason to work with green chemistry. So green chemistry is not only good for the environment, it makes good business sense. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sif and Laura. And I'm sorry for my coughing fit and for slipping you into the presentation at the wrong time. Unfortunately, I don't have access to my unmute button here. Last but not least, we're going into the strategies and tactics for deployment. And of course, the trick #1 is to copy the tactics of the industry leaders. Here, I will point to Velux, who have committed to lifetime carbon neutrality in scope 1 and 2. They're doing that in an alliance with WWF, and that's a great way of doing things. Just partner up with someone externally who can help with making setting the goals and standards and strategies and help deploy the tactics. Then secondly, Philips, they have done something that I think is tremendously cool. They're targeting 25% sales from only circular economic products and services by the year 2025. And that means that what you're looking at here is basically half of the butterfly diagram. So one of the things that they're looking at will also be to limit the amount of virgin resources that they're putting into the flow in the first instance, but then of course also dematerialize and optimize usage, sell as a service, upgrades, refurbish, do part recovery, and then last and least try and recycle and include recycled plastic over extracting raw materials. Then there's Patagonia. I think Patagonia is the coolest sustainable major company out there just because of the progress they have made. They basically put pressure on all of their suppliers at first to do organic cotton for all of their apparel. Later on, they went into putting a demand for all of their cotton suppliers to actually build topsoil, so to go into regenerative cotton farming. So they're not only being organic, they are also building topsoil, so they're strengthening the ecosystems and making those more resilient. On top of that, they're also giving the farmers better prices and better yields from their crops. So that's super, super cool, and also a way of working together with your suppliers in order to get a more sustainable product. I think that's going to be it for the presentation in the interest of time. So next up, I would love for Steffen to take center stage, and maybe Caroline, you can make the background again. Thanks.
Okay, should I just fire it off?
Yeah, take it away.
That's great. Okay, so I'm gonna do it old school with no slides. Gonna try that out. So
it's unheard of.
It's unheard of. It's radical. So I'm just gonna start presenting who I am and where I work, and then get a bit into how we work with the circularity. So like Frederik said, we have a kind of a project going on, and the project is the team that I'm managing. We are running what we call a circular facility incubator. And it's a little satellite team, you can say, that primarily works to transcend or to transform our business area in Novo Nordisk to be more circular, and that's not easy. And that business area is corporate facilities, and so it's facility management. So think all the services that a classic facility management organization works with. So it's not necessarily how can I say, only to do with the pharmaceutical world or the medtech. It's facility management in its broader sense. So what we do is try to come up with ideas. It could be novel ideas, but it's also ideas that are in the heads of all our colleagues. We take those ideas, we try to mature them, and then we try to implement them. And this is where the hard stuff is. It's the resistance in not necessarily negative resistance, but it's hard when we are talking about fundamental changes in the operation of buildings. Something that might jeopardize operation is not that easy to implement. So I would also argue this is where you truly know what circular economy is about, because it's tangible. It's about our everyday life. It's materials that we can touch and feel. It's materials that we keep on coming back to in the same building. It's materials that we use in our projects, and so on. From my perspective, I think there's like two spheres within facility management, and when we talk sustainability or circular economy. There's this world of energy. Of course, we should reduce energy. We should transform or change ourselves into sustainable energy sources. From my perspective, it's not because I want to say it's easy, but it is a bit easier. It's more, we have done this for a lot of years. Many people know what we are talking about when we need to reduce our energy consumption. That's one thing. Another thing is the true circularity, I would say, when we're talking about how can we get circular on pumps, door handles, floors, ceilings, roofs, membranes, filters, all of that stuff. That's really hard. And what did I want to say? So one of the key things is, and it's not because this hasn't been done before, but we really try to build the business cases, use the financial bottom line, of course, to push them forward. And I also think I find that these cases has always been there. It's not because circular economy is suddenly the new black and new trendy stuff. It's actually interesting when we sit down, when we do concentrated sprints to look at these different things. It seems that some of these cases that we come up with is quite straightforward, and there's even a financial gain. So there's no really an argue when we want to push it forward. But of course, this is not getting easier as we progress in the journey. When we start to have taken all the low-hanging fruits, it's going to be more and more hard and difficult. So this is where we need to do collaborations with Green Innovation Group or other partners like that to incubate the ideas with someone external. I could maybe come with some examples of what we we did a sprint with Green Innovation Group a couple of months ago, looking at the spare parts, so to say, in the buildings, to try to come up with some initiatives that was circular in the materials. A very easy one, actually. Surprisingly, we haven't done it before, but we found out that Grundfos has this program where they can take back pumps and make sure that they get into the circular economy ecosystem to reuse them. I think they reuse up to 98% of the materials in the pumps. We looked at how to optimize our use of ventilation not systems but filters. We are also trying to find out how we can turn our scrap plastic into maybe using it on a facade on buildings. And then we actually this was also already an idea that was in the head of one of our colleagues, but we can use, we think, muslingeskaller. What is that called in English? That's called
actually the shells I was talking about in the beginning that won't be able to reproduce at a 2-degree temperature rise.
Yes, so that's a problem if we implement that initiative, that it's not going to be at least 70 years that it can last. But using those seashells as filtering material instead of carbon pellets that we are getting freighted from the US at the moment. A really interesting initiative, but again, it's not because circular economy is here. It's actually something that has existed, or the technology has always been there. So I think the key is to sit down, focus your time on it, and then you will find the initiatives. But of course, to a certain degree, that's true. But I think what I want you to take away from here is that when we're talking about these everyday life things that has to be changed, when we need to talk to the technician about now she or he needs to use this other material instead, or tell these technicians that in the future you won't be able to change your filter, you need to wash it instead. That's where circular economy is hard, and that's where the real work is, I feel. And then another thing I just want to say as well, that an important thing is to get your colleagues involved. I think I saw Lisa on the call, and she's such a champion in corporate facilities. Lisa works in another department than the incubator, and the collaboration between colleagues across business areas is so important, because that's where you can get the true implementation of the initiatives. And just one last perspective is this thing about testing, piloting circular economy initiative versus sustainable. So sustainability in a different sense, sustainable implementation. So you are sure that initiative stays implemented in half a year, 2 years, or 5 years, or 10 years. And that's what I mean with sustainable implementation. That is something that I have my attention on as well, that it's relatively easy to say that we should pilot on things, but how do we get it sustainable implemented. And that's where partnerships like with other colleagues to talk about truly what is the challenges in the everyday life, what is the challenges in reusing windows and projects or something like that, to really understand it and make sure that the solution that we find truly works for project managers like Lisa.
Super cool, Steffen, and thank you so much for sharing those insights. That project has been really interesting to follow from the sidelines. I didn't take so much part in it myself. I only came in from the sidelines every once in a while. But thanks a lot for sharing the insights, and thanks for going old school, no slides. I think that was a first for a webinar for me during COVID, so it worked really well. Let's get all of the presenters online, and first off, I would like to introduce all of you to Stephen Collins from Matter. Stephen, can you take on your camera? There we go. And then I'll also ask Mikkel, Steffen, Jason, Sif, and Laura to do the same thing, so we have a little bit of a fireside chat feeling going on. But Stephen, you're the CEO of Matter, and in that role, I believe that you have seen loads of innovation in the healthcare sector. What is something in the realm of circular economy and healthcare that has impressed you in recent times?
Yeah, thanks. And it's been great to get to know you and GIG and work together. At Matter, our sort of core belief around innovation, it revolves around collaboration. And the more that we can harness the creativity and the speed with which entrepreneurs can move and their flexibility and agility, the more we can harness those capabilities and pair them with what the established industry brings, which is knowledge and know-how and technical expertise, and in this case, so many of the challenges associated with circular economy. The more we can pair those two realms to be working together to address problems, the faster we're going to be able to develop solutions and scale those and really make a difference in the world. And so we collaborated with you last year to just put one example together on a program with Novo Nordisk to identify solutions that could really help them advance their Circularity for Zero effort. And it was a terrific collaboration involving a number of entrepreneurs, involving Novo Nordisk, and really, you asked kind of what had impressed me. It isn't always easy for big companies to embrace working with entrepreneurs, and Novo Nordisk really did that, and has done that, and has really embraced kind of what it takes from a cultural point of view in order to make that kind of a collaboration successful. So it was really rewarding to be part of that and to see that continuing to unfold.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. If any of you Caroline just wrote. If you have any questions for any of the panelists, then please go ahead and write them in the chat, and I'll do my best to try and massage it into the conversation. And panelists, you can also mark if you want to answer something that I'm asking. I also have a question for Sif and Laura, and that is doing this deep dive into circular economy in the healthcare sector. What was something that surprised you in the very thorough research that you did? What was the surprising insight that you didn't expect to find?
If I may start, I think it's hard to touch upon only one point, but overall, we got in contact with loads of amazing startups, pharma startups who were focusing on circular economy, and I was amazed by all the innovative, creative solutions that they brought to the table, where we couldn't find big pharma who had the same kind of solutions. And that was just amazing to see the one startup after the other really performing in that scale with innovation and creativity. Another finding that I also want to highlight is that talking about circular economy, there's different levels of going circular, and the most common one is to recycle, which is also supporting the take, make, waste system and society that we are a part of. And it's of course nice, and we need to really have this element in, but we should also get better at focusing on the other parts of circular economy. For example, reuse, maintain, and refurbish, because they are actually more sustainable in the long run. Yeah, do you have something?
You're muted.
We can't hear you.
And can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Yeah, so just to add one more perspective to that, I think it was very surprising for us as well when we read a lot of stuff about circularity in the pharmaceutical industry. We found out that the academic research is actually lacking behind of the practitioners. So in the academic papers, we read this and this is not possible, and we need solutions for this and this, and it could be impossible to solve this. But then there was actually startups that already had a solution for a challenge. And yeah, that was incredible to find out that the startups are actually just going forward, and they're very innovative, and the academia needs to work together with the practitioners with circularity.
Cool. Thanks a lot for sharing, Laura and Sif. And I think this sort of insight into the industry is just one that keeps on unfolding, and that none of us can have a full view of, no matter how much of an expert we become. There's a question from Chelsea who's asking if anyone can speak about the current versus the needed incentives that can be used to drive more companies towards circular and sustainable development. And I think, Jason, what you're working with in Janssen is probably a project that is also showing sort of the needed incentives that are there. As you said, quite often devices are being burned for energy recapturing and or even going to landfill. So can you touch upon the existing incentives?
Yeah, I think, well, it's been a bit of an evolution. If you look at digital health devices, I mean, Fitbits have been around for a decade or so. But 10 years ago, you had devices that could give you data, but it wasn't validated data. It wasn't accurate enough to be able to make medical decisions based on it. 5 years later, you had devices that could give you that clinically validated data. But then there's this focus on, well, how do we make these devices deployable and to fit within a patient's lifestyle? We would see heart rate monitors, but you had to charge them every 4 hours. You can't deploy that in a clinical trial. Patients might make it a day or two of going through and recharging these before they just get frustrated and throw it in a corner and never touch it again. And so there's this focus on utility, and only now, and even then, I think it's are we really looking at, well, what do we do with these devices now that they're reaching the end of their life? How do we make these devices truly circular? And for a lot of the startups, it was just, how do we get a device out there? I think as Janssen, we do produce some devices, but we're probably a bigger consumer because we run clinical trials and we're always looking for the best-in-class technology to use in our trials. And I think for us to make that part of our selection criteria, that we are looking for circular devices, that's going to help spur it along. But I think there's also some enabling we need to do on that refurbishment process, because for a small startup, there's just a lot of lack of knowledge there. And so if we can find ways to invest in the development of those technologies for refurbishment, that can help push that a long way.
Thanks a lot, Jason. And I think you're definitely touching upon the right notes here. And we've just heard from Laura and Sif how cost cutting is one of the main incentives actually seen by C-level executives in the pharma industry to go into green chemistry. But I'm wondering, Steffen, from your perspective, from the American context, and I'm I'm thinking that most of us are checking into this call from Europe, where the incentives are quite often EU-based or EU funding or something similar. But what kind of incentive structures do you see from the companies that you're helping from Chicago and in the US at large?
Yeah, I think, I mean, frankly, not enough at this point. I mean, I think there are extrinsic and intrinsic kind of motivations for why to focus on circularity. And so what we see in the US and the business case around circularity tends to be, I guess, more intrinsically generated, that it will be good for business, that going out into the marketplace with a kind of a circuit with a focus on sustainability and on circularity will ultimately be good for business. It'll be good for recruiting talent. It'll be good for brand. It'll be good for sales. And so ultimately, that's, I think, what's driving more of the companies in the US at this point. And in terms of investing in the R&D aspect, I think, just going back to something that Laura said earlier and something that we kind of touched on earlier, one of the things that I think is so important is that entrepreneurs are moving faster than other areas. And so the more that we can kind of tap into them, and in a sense, they're sort of like outsource R&D for a lot of the challenges that bigger companies are facing. And the more we can kind of tap into those solutions and bring them in, the more progress we can make, and requiring, in some cases, less upfront investment from the bigger companies, because the startups are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point. What would be? I know, Steffen, we have to let you go in 2 minutes, so I just want to squeeze out another question from you. As Joachim is writing in the chat, what would you advise companies to do who wants to get started being circular?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to start somewhere, right? And so figuring out some sort of small thing that can make a difference, some sort of a project that can make a difference without too much investment, and that can then demonstrate a difference internally, because a lot of the challenge is just internally, and getting buy-in, and within large companies, and getting supportive management, and then getting budget, and getting, it's a process. And so demonstrating kind of small wins early can make a huge difference towards building momentum. I think partnering with organizations, like GIG and external experts that can offer a perspective is really can really be key, because often it's like, one person or a couple of people inside the big company that are really like the drivers of these things in particular areas. It's not like there's a whole giant
a person like Steffen and Stine, who's also in the call. They come to mind in a Novo Nordisk context.
Yeah, it's like, and it's not like there's not like 50 people with all these resources. And so being able to partner externally to extend the capabilities and expand the capabilities can really be critical. And again, not to just keep beating on this program we ran with Novo Nordisk, but it was just such a good example of, us working with GIG and working with Novo Nordisk to really extend the capacity of Novo Nordisk to address one of their key priorities. So things like that can then help accelerate efforts, and without a ton of internal investment upfront required, and then kind of building that case over time. And again, I do apologize. I had to jump off a couple of minutes early to.
Don't worry about that, Steffen. I think just as a goodbye, I think that Ava and Jason will also be interested in going into something about developing new IP models that can also help supercharge these developments. And I think I'll just use that as a segue. I'll of course introduce you all after this call. and say thank you so much, Stephen, for your contributions. And then I'll give the floor to Jason and Steffen.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, and I think it's, and Mikkel touched on this early on, but I think that the IP model is an interesting one because within the pharma industry, our investments in research are huge. So we always had this mindset of protect your investment, take out IP on everything. And we really need, and with circularity, we really need to take a step back and be willing to create a pre-competitive space where the IP is open. And we try to do that. There's times when we might take out a defensive patent on something to just avoid somebody else squatting on it. But then at the same time, there's a lack of trust in the pharma industry. If I'm going to develop a smart syringe or a more sustainable design for a syringe, other companies, even if we say, look, you can take the IP on this, other companies are going to be hesitant to do it because you have to go through this whole validation with the product to be in that new device. And companies are afraid to take that risk and then have Janssen come back a year or two down the road and say, no, we don't want you to do that anymore. We own the IP on this and we're going to halt your sales of it. We really need to create some mechanism to build trust and to keep that IP out there freely. Because at the end of the day, innovation is it's iterative. It's building on existing thoughts and ideas. And until you free up those thoughts and ideas, you're really hindering that innovation.
And Mikkel, hearing this idea of a pre-competitive space to enhance the innovation in circular economy, how does that sound to a patent attorney?
Well, it sounds a bit like the Tesla model. As far as I know, Tesla did the same with they took out patents, but they told everyone that they were free to use them. But of course, like Jason said, competitors were holding back because you need all sorts of legal agreements to ensure that that you don't risk everything. And I'm not sure. I don't think it's been documented that it works, that model, and whether it increases development. So I would be a bit hesitant to go down that road. And also, of course, since I'm a patent attorney, that would not be good for my business. But my impression is that patents work. And I completely can see the issue that you need to build innovation upon other people's innovation, but that's the case everywhere, and it seems to work. And like I said initially, there's my impression is there's a high trust in the patent system that it's the best model that exists to promote innovation. But of course, if the companies out there can see a model that works, it could also involve some patent pooling of some sort, where you agree with a lot of other companies that you can use each other's patents. We've seen that elsewhere as well. So I think it's a good idea to think about other models. And definitely, I also think it's very good to have kind of a Tesla view on the world, that you're open to share your technology if it's important for the Earth. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say blow up the patent model, but I think it's rather if we could find some sort of intermediary or neutral party that could hold that IP and keep it free, an entity that everybody would have trust in and know that, yeah, it's there, but I don't need to go through all the legal hurdles to ensure I have access to it. Maybe it's an academic institution, it's a government-funded entity, but something that can hold that IP and keep it available to the commons.
Yeah, I think it will be difficult to have everyone agree on that. I think you might share my view on that.
Cool. And I think Steffen, did you have something to chip in with as a last final note?
I just want to be very fast and just echoing Stephen in his to Joachim's question about how to get started on circularity. And I think that what I'm talking about here is not addressing devices and really difficult areas like that, but back into facility management or the like, where you can more easily implement circular initiatives. I think just a couple of words on that is I completely agree with Stephen. Early, small successes to start with. And then be careful of falling down the trap of blaming everything on lack of education. And we need to take courses and analysis and all of that stuff, because then you won't be able to generate any results for the last year or 2 years. Start cowboy style, get things done, sit down and look at it and find the things. They have always been there. There's multiple low-hanging fruits, I'm sure, so many places. Get successes and then start educating and doing small analysis.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Steffen, and thank you to all the panelists for contributing and participating. I really appreciate that, and I think that the audience out there appreciate that. And to the audience, thank you so much for listening in and for putting your brains behind the screens and listening to the wise words of the people in here. Thanks for sharing everything. The session has been recorded, so it will go online via YouTube unless anybody protests. I will of course be collecting consent from the presenters. And I think with those words, thank you so much for chipping in. It really means a lot to me. It means a lot to us in Green Innovation Group that you showed the support, for the circular economy transition as well. So with those words, you're welcome to hang back if you want to ask more questions or whatever. But you're also more than welcome to leave. Cheers. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.